Monuments to Absence is the seventh full length from FEN, a London, England based black metal group who've been around for a fair amount of time. I think this is they've just been around for about 20 years and a little bit less. But this is a band that a lot of people early on felt like was very much related or a reaction to what was going on with Agalloch and Drudk at the time in the mid 2000s, mid to late 2000s, and they certainly got a lot more notice once their full length came out. And I think British death metal at the time was sort of reaching a point where there was a broader, less insular appeal to a lot of their work, and being compared to Agalloch kind of got them out the door in a lot of ways. They always had a little bit of a maybe a progressive black metal touch, a little bit of an earthen black metal feeling to it, but really they weren't so much pagan black metal as they were post black metal. And when I say post black metal, I mean stuff that is directly influenced by post rock. And their first couple of records were very clearly influenced by post rock. If you listen to Epoch today, you'll see they were taking it much more literal than a lot of bands were in terms of being a fan of post rock and infusing that into their music. So that was they've evolved quite a bit since, and they've become a little bit more of a progressive black metal band over time. So there's a couple of things to say about that. I think what I'll say about this record, instead of diving through their whole discography, is that they've smartly suggested that this sort of tease off into the more aggressive side of the band the same way Carrie and Skies did. And that sort of triggered the memories in my mind because I liked Carrie and Skies so much more than the rest of their discography because it was a little bit more just pushing out aggression and sort of pushing away a lot of the sleepier post-rock feeling of their prior material. So we'll get into a new song here and then I'll kind of go into more detail on the actual album. So I don't know if a lot of people paid a lot of attention to The Deadlight. It was maybe a more accessible album from the band back in 2018, and it was also a little bit more of a riff album than expected. I think a lot of people posited it as a one of their softer records, when I found it to be kind of the opposite, where it was more of their more active guitar-focused records, and I liked it quite a bit. I didn't write about it, but you certainly felt a little bit more of the enslaved influence in their sound more than ever, and I think some of that translates to what the fineries of composition that we find on this new album. The Monuments to Absence is certainly a more aggressive record, but it is a more tuneful record in a lot of ways, and it does more than bluster about with aggression. It's actually one of their most progressive records to date, and one of their more, I think, one of their finer records to date. They've added the current Craven Idol drummer JG to the crew, and this has changed their sound in terms of just being more capable, more I think more playful with fills and more complex compositions to the point where a lot of these songs feel quite technically pieced together and just a little bit more spirited in their reaction. I think there's a certain reactivity to the pandemic that kind of happened with this record. I think there's certainly the world burning around them that had a lot to do with this, and with the forest on fire around them, I think it kind of lit a fire under FEN for a more interesting record. It's a really engaged record and one that runs over an hour. And it's rare that this type of record will sit with me for a full hour plus and stick throughout, and I think they've done a brilliant job of putting together a record that I want to listen to for an hour in that respect. Um, Otherwise, yeah, it's still a post black metal band in a lot of respects. There's a modern black metal sound here, and we get some of that sort of what I call a prog metal escalator on. We find it in Enslaved more recently. We also find that here on certain pieces, and that's not a problem for me because it's not every song as it is in Enslaved. In this sense, it bridges the two LPs with different sounds, and the variety here is pretty impressive. I think the fact that I can hear the bass guitar throughout the full album and just like what it's doing within every song is pretty profound for this style, and I think there's just such a finesse to this record. It feels like a band's seventh record. So a little bit of gushing for me. I think I followed this band for a long time. I really like certain records from them. I feel like this one gives me all of the finer points of FEN, and does so without indulging in bizarre ways as they have in some of the records in the past. So this is a fine representation of what they do, and something new, something that feels more fiery than ever, which I hope they continue to go with, or emphasize wherever they feel like in the future. So uh, you know, high recommendation for me. It is one of the better records of July overall, and certainly one to pick out if you like a little bit of folkish, folk progressive, and whatnot, adding to your black metal. So with special notes for songwriting and variety and whatnot. So check out the full review for more details. It's quite an extensive one this time, and go listen to the album. It's out today.